It's up to the families and the parents to educate their children on this and
Sure.
make them feel empowered by what they've been through and help them understand that there are other little children that are also waiting. And in a way, you're an advocate.
You're listening to Peachtree Corners Life, a podcast sharing ideas, opinions, and news about the city of Peachtree Corners, the community we live in, and the people that are your neighbors. Now, your host, Rico Figliolini.
Hi, everyone. This is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Life. Today we have a special guest. I'll bring her on shortly. A sponsor of the podcast and this family of podcasts is Peachtree Corners Magazine, which is coming out. We just put that to the printer this week, and we'll have our issues hitting the mailboxes sometime next week, middle of next week, I think. So check it out. It's one of our biggest issues, and we're talking about holidays in Peachtree Corners, along with a lot of other stories in there. But today's podcast is an important podcast. It deals with a mother, an author, and her child. But let me start off a little bit with some stats that you all should be aware of. 106,868. That's the number of men, women, and children on the National Transplant List, according to the organdonor.gov site. Every year, a certain amount gets to have a transplant, but it's a smaller number than what's on the list. Last year alone, only 39,000 transplants were performed. That means that about 8 lives almost every day pass because there's not enough living or past life donors to be able to help with this situation. Today's guest is an author, a mother. She's a mother first, became an author because of the journey she's had. She's a resident of Peachtree Corners, and she is a first-time author, and the journey she's had with her daughter that inspired that book, because that child had to have a transplant as well. And because there weren't the right amount of people, or actually the right person to donate, or the right organ available, her mom became the living donor in 2018. And that inspired this book and our conversation today. So let me bring her on. Her name is Annalie Navarro. Hey, Annalie. Nice to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. So tell us a little bit about the journey that you had with your daughter. And that must be tough because at some point you were looking for donors, but then you had to make that decision because no donor organs were available that matched. Maybe not a tough decision for a mother. I don't know. I'm a father of 3 kids, and I think I would feel the same way. And I certainly would do what needed to be done to save my child. So tell us a little bit about what that journey was like for you and how
Sure.
that started.
So our daughter, Julia, she's our firstborn. And when she was almost 4 months old, she was diagnosed with biliary atresia. And that is a rare condition that about 1 in 10,000 babies are born with here in the U.S. What that meant is that she was inevitably going to need a liver transplant, and she was going to go into the waiting list. There is a procedure called a Kasai procedure that can be done to help elongate the life of the liver, the native liver. Unfortunately, my daughter was diagnosed too late to be able to qualify for that procedure. Our pediatrician initially missed it, and she was diagnosed at almost 4 months. So at that point, having that Kasai procedure, it was only like a 25% success rate. And so we decided that it was best to just wait for a transplant. We ended up being listed and waiting on the transplant. We were at the top of the waiting list for a child. Unfortunately, one didn't come. And maybe not unfortunately, but just one didn't come. Initially, when we were told that she was going to need a liver transplant, we immediately asked, is it something that we ourselves can donate to her? And thankfully, the liver is one of the few organs that you are able to be a living donor for. And so we went through the process, and I was able to be her donor. It was a very extensive process to be able to qualify as a donor. And it happened here in Atlanta. So she was at Eggleston, and I was at Emory University Hospital. They collaborate, and they are one of the few places in the country that are able to do living donors. And we are so fortunate to be here in Atlanta where that was possible.
Wow. Unbelievable. That's fortunate that you were able to be in the right place. It's almost like God's hands put that there.
Exactly. It was tough times, but we were at the right place, and we were fortunate enough to be able to be at a place where they could do the procedure and where I could also be a living donor. And I was fortunate enough to be a match for her. There are many parents that have to end up waiting for an organ donor because neither a family member or themselves are able to donate for whatever reason. So they just have to sit there and wait. And that's a very painful and just dreadful wait for you to just sit there and watch your child deteriorate.
Now, most people may not understand there's a certain portion of your liver that was donated. Obviously, not your whole liver, because so what is it? It's like 25%. They find a portion of it that needs to be donated, right?
Yeah. So for Julia, I had to undergo about, I think it was like a 2-3 day series of tests at Emory, everything from blood work to scans. I mean, they look at everything. You have to be in optimal health in order to be a donor. And then aside from that, you also have to have the perfect liver. And like I said, it was a miracle that I was able to donate to her and that we were at a place where they could do it.
Wow. So how long was the process from the point where you went under to the point where it was completed?
So I went in at around 5 o'clock in the morning. Before I went to Emory, I went to Choa, to Eggleston, to see her before the procedure. And I was able to give her a hug and a kiss. And then I walked across the street to Emory. And then from there on, I think it was about, I remember very little of it. It's about an 8-hour procedure for myself. And halfway through it, that's when they brought her in, and then they started to open her up and get her ready and get the native liver out in order to put my half in there, or my portion.
So that was 2018. That was 3 years ago. How old's your daughter now?
She's 4, and her 4th anniversary is coming up in March the 26th. And every year we celebrate it as if were her birthday, because it is a sort of rebirth.
Is she aware of what happened? How aware is she of everything?
Oh, yeah, she knows the whole story, and that's why the book was born. I wanted to make sure that she knew what she had been through, and I wanted her to feel empowered and own her story. So I want her to be able to share what she has journeyed through and understand the importance and how strong and mighty she is. At the time, she was only 7 months old, but since I can remember, I've always told her that she has a small portion of mom in her belly, and that it was something that she braved through. And that's how the book came about. I started telling her all these different stories, and I said, what's a good way to present this to a child and to help her understand what it is that she's been through at such a young age. And I was not able to find a book or anything that would, that she could see herself in. So I went ahead and I decided, you know what, I'm going to write a book. Because she's not the only child that has had a transplant, and she's not the only child that a parent needs to have this type of discussion with. Sure. And sometimes it's not the child per se. It might be a brother. It might be a friend. It might be a grandparent that had to have a transplant. So this is a good way to present it to them and open that conversation and start that important dialogue about organ donation.
It's amazing. And the book is Mighty Me. Just bought that off Barnes & Noble. So everyone should go out. We'll have a link in the show notes and stuff. It's a great book, well written, beautifully explained, actually. Very well done. The artwork is phenomenal. So I think you have a great book there and a great story, obviously. So I'm glad that you were able to do this. Unfortunately, not every parent is able to do this, like you said. And it's very difficult to find donors online. And because of COVID, and you were fortunate also, that was the other thing, 2018 was pre-COVID. So when COVID came about, living donors, that dropped. The amount of living donor donations dropped by far. And so there was a push to do donors after death. And I think that's actually been at the highest level, I think in 2020 or something like that, than ever before.
Important point that you're bringing up, because we are one of the happy stories when it comes to biliary atresia. Unfortunately, and it's very heartbreaking, I've seen too many children pass away and die, either one, because they didn't have a donor that came in on time, or two, it's such an aggressive disease that it's hard to get them to the point. It's such a fine line between being sick enough to qualify for a transplant and being healthy enough to be able to receive the transplant. And some centers might not have as much experience, and then so we end up with parents going and traveling to other places to be able to receive a transplant as well. On top of the fact that some centers don't actually do living donors. It's so important to start building that awareness about how important it is to become a donor, but then also that there is the option to be a living donor. And as you pointed out at the beginning, there is a long list of people waiting to receive an organ such as a liver. And many of those people on the waiting list are actually pediatric patients and tiny babies. Julia was only 7 months old when she received her transplant. So there are babies waiting on different organs that sometimes we don't think about, because when we think of somebody waiting on an organ, we picture an adult. We don't picture a child or a newborn or a baby. But, it's important to keep that in mind and become aware that we are able to save people's lives and leave a legacy behind, one that is of love and of life to a child or an adult.
You have beautiful kids. I just put the picture on so that people can see. Beautiful kids. Here's another shot, actually, and this is you and Julia?
And Julia, yes.
Julia.
And I've gotten many questions from people wanting to be living donors, especially women that have wanted to donate to a parent or to a sibling, and being pregnant and having a child after being an organ donor.
And you're a great advocate for it because you've been through the process.
Yes.
But let me take a step back also, because there's dangers in everything that's done in this world, especially when it comes to transplants, rejection of the organ donation and all that. So how long was your daughter actually under observation after the surgery was done?
So she was there for about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. She had some issues post-transplant with her breathing, but it was, because of her biliary atresia, she developed cirrhosis of the liver. So before she received the transplant, she was yellow. And I wish I would have sent you those pictures, but she was extremely yellow because her bilirubin level was extremely high. And so as soon as my portion of the liver went in, within a couple of hours, you could just see her looking so much healthier and her skin color completely changed. It's amazing to see.
It's a bit of a miracle to be able to see that, and especially everything that you've gone through.
Yes.
I imagine the family circled around and supportive of everything.
Oh, yeah, for sure. My husband, he was amazing. I always say that I had the easiest portion in all of this because I was in the hospital, and he's the one that had to send me out to be the donor and go under the knife. And then after that, run to CHOA and take care of our daughter and then send her off. And I can't even imagine what he was going through, waiting on me to be done with my part of the procedure.
Wow.
And then for her to come out at the end and be well, for both of us to be well, and then take care of both of us at the same time too.
Sure.
Thankfully, like you pointed out, we have a strong support system and our families are here, and they were able to take turns and watch me, and then also have him stay with her at the hospital too.
Right. And just because I know that, I don't want to get into necessarily health insurance and all that, but were you able to be covered by all that? Did insurance cover transplants and all that?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Thankfully, we had insurance. And if you are a living donor, the insurance coverage for the person that needs the liver or that needs the organ is the one that will cover you as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, we had coverage, and it was a lot that we had to go through. But thankfully, we had everything, just all the stars line up.
Yeah. Definitely the hospitals here, being able to do it here, not having to travel or being away for 2, 3, 4 weeks for the whole process to be done. That's just, I can see how that could be a burden and stress.
Yeah, for sure. You're just so worried. You're a parent and you know what it must have been like. Thankfully, the team that we had at Eggleston and CHOA was amazing, and they were able to educate us at every level about what the disease was about, what to expect, what the procedures were going to be, what our options were. And so we're just so incredibly thankful with Children's and everything that they've been able to do for us and for our family and give life back to our daughter.
Yeah, and even the other side of that, being able to, for some families, getting paid time off maybe, or being able to do that, to have the financial ability, the health insurance to be able to do that, and the support system of family. becomes very important at this point. Does your daughter still have to, I imagine your daughter still has to go back on a regular basis to be checked every once in a while? Or?
Yes, and I did as well. So she is at the point where she only goes back every 6 months, just so they can, do some blood work and make sure that she's doing fine. And thankfully, she's thriving and she is full of energy and life. And she's
Cool.
just amazing. And also, initially, for the first year, I want to say I had to go back every so often as well, because they wanted to make sure that my liver was regenerating and that everything was working correctly.
Okay. And the idea is that the liver within your daughter's body is going to regenerate also, I would imagine.
Yeah, and
right?
grow with her.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
and as far as, was she having to take medications? Because sometimes with transplants, I guess you have to do that possibly.
Yes. So initially she had to take 7 different medications, and now she's down to 1. And she takes an immunosuppressant that helps her system not attack the liver, because obviously it's not her native liver.
Does she have to keep taking that?
She has to take it. Yeah, it's a very insignificant, almost. It's like a little tiny droplet that she takes every day, twice a day. And it just makes sure that her immune system is at a certain level where they need it to be, to make sure that it doesn't go into rejection because of the liver.
Do you have to be a little bit more careful because of COVID?
Yes. And now parents that are having their children get their transplant right now, I can't even imagine, because initially the immunosuppressants that they take at the beginning of their transplant is a lot higher. And then they start dosing them down a little bit. So for us, we keep our circle very close and small. And it's just basically family, a couple of friends that we know that are very still cautious. And it's important for people to keep children in mind that are also immunocompromised, cancer patients, and everybody when it comes to COVID as well.
Sure. So stepping back a little bit, when did the idea of Mighty Me, the book, come about? Was it before or after this? When did that thought hit you that you should be an author of a book like this?
Well, I've always enjoyed reading, and that was one of the things that I wanted to pass down to my children. And with Julia, I always bought her a lot of books, and I wanted her to live many different lives. And I thought, what a great story her story is, to help educate other children and to help other children see themselves as well, not as victims of a disease or as victims of life, that they've struggled with a disease, but more to feel empowered and be able to share that with their friends. I wanted her to have something to be able to take to school and say, look, this is my favorite book, and this is why it's my favorite book. It's about me. It's about my own journey, and I braved through this. And that's how it came to be. I wrote the story in like a day and a half, maybe. And then the longest process was trying to find the right illustrator that had the look that I was going for, and that was going to be able to tell the story with the pictures the way I had envisioned it. And as you know, with children's books is half the story and half the illustration. So if you don't have both and the perfect marriage of both, the story might not be able to transmit everything that the author intended. And so that's how it came to be. Eventually, I found someone in another country. That took me forever, but it's been an amazing journey so far.
She's in Mexico, I think, right?
She's
from. I mean, it's just beautiful illustrative work. So you're right. I think children's books, or any picture book really, lives on both the writing and the artwork. It has to be captivating. And I think as anyone might look through this, they'll see that. So it was very well done. Do you plan other books as well?
Yes, actually, this book has had such an amazing, received such an amazing reaction within the transplant community, because as I said before, it's nothing that we had before. We didn't have a way to open that dialogue with our children or their siblings and help them understand in a child way what a transplant was and what the journey was about. And so this has been so well received. I'm actually working on another 2 books right now. And to tell the stories of, one is unfortunately the other side and the other end of children that end up not being able to get their transplant. So that's such a hard thing to talk about with anyone, but especially children. And I felt that in my heart, it was something that I had to work on and do as well to bring that about. And it has to do with one of the characters in the book, that in the Mighty Me book right now as well.
That is a tough subject to be able to, can't even imagine doing that. As far as owning that journey, transforming that journey. Do you see a special mission for your daughter as well as she gets older? Does she participate with you? I mean, she's only 4, but I'm sure these events that you go to and stuff may be on this.
Yes. She's
Do you
gone to a
expect?
couple of the book signings that I've done, and we are also working on putting together a package to donate to the transplant floor at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And so she's very excited about that. She wants to sign all the books and write them a note and send them little drawings and say, "You're strong." And I was like, Julia, that's so kind. But it's I think it's up to the families and the parents to educate their children on this and
Sure.
make them feel empowered by what they've been through and help them understand that there are other little children that are also waiting. And in a way, you're an advocate for them. And you're an
Yeah.
advocate for transplants and for biliary atresia. And not to give her a big burden to be able to do that, but just to make it into something that just comes with who she is as a person and be able to be giving and kind and just be considerate and help share the stories of others based on her own story as well.
Yeah, she has a strong story to tell, and a loving mother and family, obviously,
Thank
to be
you.
able to go through all that. The fundraising work that you're doing is mainly through the books, I imagine, and they're available online. I think that. Well, I know I bought mine on. I think it was Barnes and Noble or Amazon, probably.
Yeah, so you can find it on Amazon. And we've worked with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta before because it just happens too that they have one of the few research programs for biliary atresia. So biliary atresia is a disease that we don't know much about yet. We don't know what causes it. We don't know how to prevent it. As I said before, the only forms of treatment that we have right now are the Kasai procedure and a transplant. So we are working with them to be able to fund a research program. And before COVID, we actually hosted an event fundraiser, and we donated a substantial amount to them through the event as well. And we hope to continue to work with them on this and help find a cure, a way to prevent BA, because research to us is such an important aspect of a rare disease. You're not only helping the community, which is something that we love to do as well, but you're making a global impact. Because there are children in other countries, even here in Choa, you see people traveling from other countries to be able to bring their children here and have a transplant. So to us, that's a way of us giving back, being able to help save other children as well, and give back as much as we can. And every holiday season since Julia's transplant, we try to hold a fundraiser. And before we had the book, we would donate blankets or toys and do like a toy drive or a blanket drive. And this year, just to make it that much more meaningful, we want to donate our Mighty Book to the transplant department at Choa too.
So while you're on that, where would people go to, besides Amazon? If people search on Amazon, they can find Mighty Me by Navarro. That's an easy enough search. Anywhere else that they can find the book?
Just on Amazon right now. Hopefully next year, I'm trying to turn it into a hardcover and be able to bring the other books and create that much awareness and donate more too.
And is there a website or social media that people can follow or visit to find out more?
Sure. Yeah. My Instagram account is D.A. Navarro. And as you point out, my name is Annalie Navarro. So you should find me pretty easily. I don't think there are many of me yet.
Yes, if people do Navarro, Mighty Me, I think the book pops up like number 1 or something. And so portions of the book sales goes to the research as well.
So the fundraiser that we're doing right now is for every $25, we are donating 2 books to transplant children at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And also we want to donate additional funds to the research program as well.
Okay. And it's important to be able to do that. There's plenty of unfortunate diseases out there that don't have advocates for them. They don't even have, I guess they're called orphan drugs, where there's not even treatments because there's just not enough of a sickness out there for pharmaceutical companies to go and create treatments, to research treatment for them. So it's great that you're doing this. Obviously, there's a personal experience and a personal reason for doing this, but you're the best advocate for that because of that. So glad one door opens, one door closes, one door closes, one door opens. So the idea of the transplant and the book that came about from it is just phenomenal. I was going to say, I'm sure, as you said, there'll be more books coming, maybe even in other languages as well. That's a possibility, I would think.
Yes, as you said, we actually translated the book to Spanish already and looking
Ah,
into
okay.
Portuguese. I had people from even the Netherlands and Spain and Portugal reach out to me that they ordered the book, they received it. And as I
Yeah.
mentioned before, it's a one of a kind book when it comes to our transplant community. And it's not just for livers, it's also, as you probably noticed when you read the book, it doesn't mention anything about an
Right.
organ or it doesn't mention anything about a liver. It's just a journey that this mighty little girl goes on to
Hmm.
be able to save her own life. And so I wanted to make it as broad as possible so that any child could be able to see themselves in the journey, regardless of what they've gone through.
Yeah, no, I think the idea of searching, I don't want to give spoiler alert, but searching for this stone, I think was obviously a good analogy of what this little girl in the book goes through. So, yeah, I think anyone that's looking at transplants, anything, quite frankly, hope
Mhm.
in something, that journey to be able to find hope and resolve is important. So, I would encourage people to go out and search Mighty Me. Find the book online. If you have questions for Annalie Navarro, you can find her through the social media that she mentioned. Probably comment and message her on Instagram. Do you want to give us any more thoughts that you want to leave us with, Annalie?
Yes, I do want to say that, sometimes as a parent, and especially as a first time parent, you are dealt some cards that sometimes you don't anticipate. You think about having this perfect little baby that's going to be healthy and strong. And our baby was perfect and strong. Unfortunately, she wasn't healthy. And we had to journey through this very complicated road that there was no roadmap to. So if you find yourself being at the beginning of a complicated journey, just know that it's important for you to choose what it is that you're going to make out of the journey and how you want it to end up. I know sometimes a lot of things are out of your control, but if you just trust and become positive and just think positively and know that your child feeds off of your energy, and that as a parent, it is important for you to be their rock, to be able to be their powerhouse and feed them that energy and just make the most out of it. And obviously, if you're not an organ donor, please consider becoming one, because you are able to save many lives. And you can even do it while you are still living. And there are many children, as we said before, waiting on a transplant. And it's a painful wait for the parent and for the child as well. So you have the power within you to give life to others and to be able to save them and leave a great legacy of love and life behind.
Great. Perfect. Thank you, Annalie, for spending some time with us and telling us about your story and your book. Everyone, it's a great little book. I think you should pick it up. Mighty Me. Find it on Amazon. And if you have questions about the journey, or you have your own journey that you want to ask questions about, I'm sure Annalie Navarro will be more than willing to answer those questions. So find her social media link in our show notes, or search for Navarro, Mighty Me, and you'll find where she is. Thank
Thank
you,
you so
Annalie.
much. Thank you for having me here. And as you said, you can find me on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll be more than happy to share more questions or answer your questions too.
Excellent. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Peachtree Corners Life with Rico Figliolini. You can listen to the show wherever podcasts are found, like iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Leave us a review too. It helps others find the show as well. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and YouTube channel for notifications of our live simulcast video streams of the show. Catch our other podcast shows at livinginpeachtreecorners.com. In fact, you can listen to our other popular show, The Capitalist Sage, a twice-a-month podcast about and for businesses. The show brings you interviews with business owners, leaders, and subject matter experts. Find what you need to meet today's challenges that every business owner faces. Check out the show at thecapitalistsage.com.